This is a brief overview of the science of evolutionary culturology, or EvCult for short. So, evolutionary culturology sits atop all these other domains in terms of the vertical integration of knowledge, going all the way down to evolutionary mathematics. And there's more detail in the textbook, Evolutionary Culturology. The definition of EvCult is the science of how and why culture evolves and examines the units, the levels, and the mechanisms of cultural evolution. So we'll quickly run through these 5 areas: the principles, models, research questions, case studies, and predictions of EvCult. Where has this been published before? In 5 other articles, first in 2016 as a book chapter, then reprinted in various encyclopedias and AI books, and this year in the Encyclopedia of Creativity. But the book expands out the information contained in those 5 chapters with more detail and case studies and information. So, a quick run through of some of the principles of EvCult. Culture is defined as ideas, processes, and products. So there's nothing in culture that's not one of those 3 things. The unit of culture is defined as the whole on Pathon. There's a side view on the left and a top view or a cross-section view on the right. It's basically the one item. There's 2 evolutionary algorithms: selection, variation, transmission, and then variation, selection, and transmission in systems. All units of culture are seen as tools or technology for solving problems. We also examine cost-benefit ratios in evolution, which is how biological evolution works over deep time as well. And using the standard 3-part definition of creativity. Many people know the standard 2-part definition, which is a cultural artifact that is new and useful, or original and effective, from Runco and Jaeger 2012. But EvCult prefers the 3-part definition, an artifact that's new, useful, and surprising, from Simonton, Brunner, Bowden, and others. And you can use Kullback-Leibler divergence as a mathematical measure of surprise. So, here's a good quote from Martindale: "Ultimately, all creative products have this quality: old ideas or elements are combined in new ways." This is the case for all domains of creativity. So on the left we have the universal algorithm for creativity: combine 2 old things to get a new thing, and it works. This is how it works in biology when you have 2 organisms and combine half of them each to get a new unit of biology, or in culture, combine 2 units of culture to get a new one, as long as it's judged new, useful, and surprising. So that's the universal algorithm for creativity: combine 2 old things and get a new thing, and it works. That's one of the principles used in EvCult to examine why some units of culture go viral. Another principle is the Anna Karenina principle from Jared Diamond's book Guns, Germs and Steel, where success for a unit involves many factors, and failure can be just due to one of those elements failing. That's from Jared Diamond, and also applied to film by Dean Keith Simonton and others in other domains. EvCult also uses the principles of systems science. So you basically have a system that contains algorithms, it has inputs and outputs, and it's in an environment. And more detail on systems science goes back to von Bertalanffy and Capra and Luisi and many others. But essentially EvCult is all based on systems science. Now some of the models used in EvCult. There's the whole on Pathon structure of the meme, the unit of culture, which looks something like that as a side view and a cross-section view. They're basically the one unit viewed two different ways. So all units of culture are structured like this, and they're structured by the three laws of Holon Pathons, where units on each level integrate upwards into the level above, compete, cooperate, and do co-opetition sideways with units on the same level, and command and control the units inside them on the smaller levels below them. So we have those three laws operating at all levels of the Holon Pathon. So this is how memes or units of culture are structured, whether they be books, movies, languages, songs, scientific theories, you name it. And this also applies to everything in physics, chemistry and biology. So from the atoms down the bottom up through organisms or even humans to universes and multiverses, they're all structured as Holon Pathons because they're all systems and they're all organised by the three laws of Holon Pathons. So here's another formula that's used in EvCult. I goes to P. Ideas, processes and products. So we have a meme that's an idea up there at the moment. It translates through processes, whether mental or physical, to become a product. And it can also work the other way, where a product in the external world goes through a process to become an idea, and this iterative and recursive spiral is how ideas, processes and products generate each other. Then we have another model, which is the big systems metamodel of creativity. There's the domain, the person down the bottom, and the field bottom left. So it's a three-part system, and it's fractal because inside the person is a memory, imagination, judgment system, which is similar to the larger structure. So we can see it more clearly here, how it's fractal, how inside the person there's a memory, imagination and judgment system, which they use to come up with new ideas to present to the field, and if they're lucky may enter the domain. So here's an illustration of that. It's a bit clearer if we see it in diagrams or symbols. So you have the domain or knowledge up top, the person down the bottom right, and the field down the bottom left. This is an example using the film industry. And it also works the same in science, so the arts and the sciences are no different when it comes to creativity. You still have this systems metamodel of creativity at work underneath it. And so we have a meme up top in the domain. It goes into somebody's memory, this idea, process or product. It then goes to their imagination, where they may alter or mutate or vary it somewhat. Then if they judge it is worth showing to the field, they present the idea to the field, and if the field accepts the idea as new, useful and surprising, it enters the domain, and this cycle can repeat over and over. Or the field may judge the artifact as uncreative, in which case it becomes archive, and as opposed to the canon of the domain. So we have these memes populating this larger mechanism of the system's metamodel. And we can also reverse this, so doing synthesis as opposed to analysis, so going back all the way up through those domains to culturology. And this is the idea of consilience, or the vertical integration of knowledge, or the unity of knowledge. And all of those domains, culturology, anthropology, sociology, etc., have this same system underpinning them all, the domain, person, field interaction. As for the two evolutionary algorithms, there's the variation in this one is up the top in the middle, selection, variation and transmission. So that's one kind of evolutionary algorithm, SVT, as opposed to when the variation takes place in the pool, which could be a mutation. So Those are the two different kinds. And evolution as an algorithm tends to go mutation, combination, replication, then overpopulation and selection, which can be one of 4 kinds. And on the right there is an example with a biological population of organisms and the environment. And so within this systems meta model, up top we have the cultural domain, and that divides up into 7 categories of canon, either classic or popular, critically acclaimed, award-winning, viral, avant-garde or cult status, and the larger circle are the archive or uncreative units of culture. So that's a zoom in on the cultural domain. It breaks up into these categories of canon. We can also examine the creative product, the unit itself, whether it's a book or a song or a movie or a word, what have you. But there's these other 6 elements we can examine as well to see how that creative artifact emerged in culture. On the left there is the Wiley Handbook of Genius, edited by D.K. Simonton. So we can examine works of genius and see this quite clearly, where these 7 factors come into play to result in a creative unit of culture. And there's also this 12-step algorithm, creative practice theory. So you have a person or agent born into a biosociocultural environment. They develop a habitus or feel for the game in Bourdieu's terms and get access to economic capital, navigate the field and the domain. If they internalize a cultural domain, they amass cultural capital and social capital by navigating the field. They may create an artifact that is judged creative by the field, and they may acquire symbolic capital or awards and recognition. So this is combining Csikszentmihalyi and Bourdieu's theories of cultural production. And one extra way to break down units of culture is using the 5C model of creativity, whether the idea, process or product is everyday creativity, ranging through professional genius or highly eminent genius. And there's also personal and historical creativity from Margaret Bowden's studies. An idea might be new to one person but not new historically, or it may be the first historical discovery or invention of that unit of culture. So with the domain up top in the meta model, we can use that 5C model of creativity as well as the 7 categories of canon to analyze units of culture. And of course, it's a 3-part system, so you need the person from the field, and we have the field, including the gatekeepers, critics, and the mass audience. So that's the systems meta model, and we can use these tools to analyze any domain in culture because they're all structured as whole-on Pathons and they all operate via the 3 laws of whole-on Pathons. One example is by analysing written human language, just as one case study, looking at the whole-on Pathons. Down the bottom, the basic units of words are letters. So we can consider a letter, a single letter as a unit. That integrates upwards into a morpheme, which is part of a word. And morphemes integrate upwards to become words. They integrate upwards to become phrases. They integrate up into dependent clauses. They integrate into sentences. And finally a discourse, whether it's a poem, book, article, joke, song, or what have you. So that's just looking at one domain in culture, how the units are structured. And as for the research questions that come up in evolutionary culturology, the key is, why do certain ideas, processes and products, or memes, units of culture, go viral in culture, and what are their function, history, mechanisms and development, from Tinbergen's 4 questions, and what are the values behind them? Are they pro-social or more corporate values? So in terms of what the units and levels are, and the mechanisms of selection, there's 4 kinds of selection: natural, artificial, sexual and unconscious. The units and levels question is answered by the structure of the holon parton itself. So when we see that structure when analysing culture, we automatically see the units and levels, and regarding the mechanisms, we have the systems metamodel and those two evolutionary algorithms. So those are the tools used as lenses, and we can use those to analyse pretty much any domain in culture. Noticing how they evolve. In terms of case studies, there's one that's in the book, including the domain of cinema, where in my PhD, which was an Ev Cult study, comparing and contrasting the highest and lowest return on investment movies, so the most profitable versus the least profitable units, and comparing the characteristics across 30 different dimensions. And this results in a set of guidelines which are essential characteristics of high return on investment or viral or profitable or successful movies, comparing the viral to the non-viral. And as I say, that's just one example from cinema, but you can do this comparative analysis with the evolution of any domain in culture, using these tools of the holon parton and the systems metamodel. We're used to seeing evolutionary trees of things like languages and the development of inventions, but we can also map the evolution of various sciences and the emergence of other domains over time. And a fun little citizen science experiment you can try at home is go to Google Ngrams and put in competing words and see which ones have won the evolutionary arms race for the most frequently used example of that word. Other cases you can look at are words that have become shortened over time, like manufactory eventually became factory. That's an interesting one to plot in a Google Ngram. Outdated science concepts like phlogiston and quadrumana, you can see them go extinct. Portmanteau words, where you combine two old words to get a new one. Brad and Angelina Jolie, or mansplaining, combining old words to get new words. You can see how the evolutionary algorithm works there. Replaced words and even letters that have gone extinct and characters that have gone extinct over time. So as a fun citizen science project, you can do a Google Ngram. The predictions are contained in the book, so this is supposed to be a short presentation. I'll leave it there. More information on my PhD blog, Storyality, and that is Evolutionary Culturology in a nutshell.